Very good morning, and welcome to Arcadem's podcast this week. As always, great to have Philip and Christian on board. So good morning, chaps. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. All is well, thank you.
Now, one of the themes can be quite a controversial theme that we're going to be talking about today, but we definitely feel from where we sit in the industry that we want to have a little talk about it. We want to sort of share our opinions with everybody. So hopefully, everybody, takes it on the chin of what we're going to talk about today. So our theme this week is underage gambling outside of the sort of gambling industry, and we're going to go into a fair amount of depth. We're not going to try and say too many games providers or whatever else up close and personal, but we want to talk about the subject because we feel it really is necessary that we sort of chip in and talk about this ourselves. So let me just dive straight into the first question. The risk of underage kids playing was always a huge problem in the gambling industry in general, right? So how do we feel moving towards online platform has changed or made this problem worse?
With gambling in general, it was a problem because I can speak from personal experience. During the 90s in the UK, for instance, I used to go to the dog track, for instance, with my uncle and my stepdad, and the perception of gambling was just, it's a bit of fun, it's part of the culture, and it was a fun day out. And I sometimes actually gambled at age 6 years old because back in those days, no one generally cared because it was not seen in the perception it is today. And in around the early 2000s, that's when responsible gambling, for underage gambling especially, came into effect, and even more so with online gambling. And now people have to verify their identity. It's really difficult for someone who is underage to gamble online. They can lie about their identity, but eventually they will be caught when they are verified, and then they'll be closed down and etc. etc. So I think for online gambling these days, and even land-based gambling like in casinos or bookmakers or at the dog track or at a racing track for horses, you have to prove you're 18. Mm-hmm. So it's come massive leaps and bounds since when I was a kid in the 90s. But I think with the online sphere, it's actually away from the gambling industry where the gambling's actually happening, and it's because it can be interpreted as not as gambling. If you can twist it your way, that's where the problem is actually coming from. Because again, kids unfortunately these days can go play video games or freemium games or on social media where it can be interpreted in a different way. So in terms of in law, so it's outside of the industry's kind of control, and there's nothing we can do as an industry to police this because it's completely from us. We have no power at all.
Yeah.
We can't do anything, and we need to discuss with governments and legislation bodies to get these rules and regulations in place to protect children from this. Because again, it didn't affect me that much when I was a child, but it wasn't as crazy as it is now. And once you play a video game and used to playing a video game, a kid will come on. He's 17 today. He'll buy some packs, or he'll buy some booster in a game to boost his gameplay, and then he turns 18 next day. It's a gateway into gambling, and he can legally go and do it, and he thinks he can replicate the stuff that he's been doing in a video game, but there's more on the line this time, and it's not a game anymore.
Yes, to follow Philip a bit there as well. When we growing up, everybody didn't have a smartphone or iPad available. Now you can even have 3-year-olds sitting on an iPad playing games on their parents' accounts. We've all seen these horror stories in the newspaper where some youngster doesn't really understand what's happening and rocks up a massive credit card bill on the parents' account, and they are left in distress and do not know how to move forward. And these are things that we from the gambling industry do not want to see, because this affects a lot of lives, and it puts a bad, just vibe around the whole world, word gambling and games.
Just one thing, I just want to briefly go back a half a step, Philip, to one of the things that you talked about was sort of getting everybody together and governments together and certain bodies together to talk about it. Do you think there's a desire from these types of bodies, these types of governments, people in general that want to see this change coming through, or is there something underlying that's sort of feeding this almost?
Well, I think it's a lack of understanding from the government's perspective, because in the UK they had an inquiry, a parliamentary inquiry about this crisis in the video game industry where children were buying these packs by the thousands. There was a case where a kid spent like £5,000 of his mum's money in a day buying these packs on a game, because it's like £7 to get some points and then these points go away really quickly. And it's based on a random number generator system, so it's heavily weighted into the gaming company's favour to buy more of these packs. And in the parliamentary review, they got the gaming companies to come and they discussed, but it was, I'll be honest, it was a lot of crap, because the gaming companies skirted around everything. They were like, oh no, we have these safe implementations, whatever. For this game, I'm using an example, I won't mention the game, but 3-year-olds can play this game. A 3-year-old could buy a pack. Like, oh, come on, the kid's gambling at age 3. And the kid doesn't understand the gambling. For them, it's just like, oh, get a booster and whatever. And the parliamentary review ended up, nothing happened. Like, there was no enforcement on these video games. There was even going to be more stricter regulations on us as the gambling industry off the back of this, in a way where these Twitch TV bans came in for underage, which I totally agree. You need to age gate this kind of content. But again, it's one of those where we have no control over the video game industry, and we're getting tighter and tighter and tighter on regulations. And then we have parents complaining about this kind of underage gambling, but there's nothing we can physically do. And they even had a parliamentary review about it, and nothing happened, because the video game companies can twist it to the way they're saying they're playing a game, they're not gambling. Well, they are. If you're buying a pack and you're basically gambling on the outcome of this pack to get a great player or a great booster for your gun or whatever the outcome you want is, and you don't get it and you get a rubbish reward, and you go and sell this player for virtual coins, or you sell this item for virtual coins, and then basically repeat the process getting a great player. I've bought these packs in the past. I buy these packs now, but I'm an adult. I know what I'm doing. Children don't. They just see it as a way to boost their game, and parents have started to realise, how expensive this is. We've seen a lot of, as Christian mentioned, in the press, where even on freemium games on mobile, kids have racked up 10 grand bills buying extra lives or whatever to boost the gameplay in this game, and then the parent gets a bill, and the parent's screwed. They can't afford 10 grand. It's the same equivalent of someone going to lose 10 grand playing online gambling, betting, or playing slots or sports bets or whatever. It's the same equivalent. If they lose 10 grand there and they can't afford it, and they still got to pay. So again, it's they've tried to do this legislation or government bodies to review, but the people reviewing this didn't understand what they were doing. They didn't understand the issue. They were asking questions to these video gaming executives or freemium executives and even gambling industry experts, but they didn't know what they were talking about. So how can someone investigate something they have no clue on and expect to get an outcome at all? Like, it's just some word. They need to have industry professionals on both sides of the fence to do these bodies.
Yeah, it feels almost like these companies, they're protected behind their terms and conditions, where they put the blame on the parents if they give them access, whereas we as the gambling sphere has more strict rules for age verification. You can't just, your parents vote for you that you're 18. So I think this is one of the things that needs to be looked into this industry as well, to make sure that the age regulation is not just put on the parents, it's actually put on the companies itself as well, to make sure that everybody who plays their games, be it social, be it video games, be it a slot game, take the responsibility and make sure it doesn't reach vulnerable people, especially people underage.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, because I think the audience want to sort of hear sort of different sides of the view. If you're going into a shop and you're buying a game that is 18 plus, invariably, we've all been there, right? In all of the game shops, when you see kids that go in that clearly are not 18 and they're buying an 18s game, right? One, the retailer is selling them that game, right? Knowing full well that the content in there is 18 plus. How do you then physically, from a pure game perspective, stop these underage kids that are going in, buying it, and actually playing the content? Yes, I mean, if you look at our games, it's age verification, right? Unless you put your name in it, this, that, and the other, your age, you can't get in and play the games. But for these, what would you perceive would be the sort of steps that these guys could take to physically stop underage people playing these types of games and buying them? I
think it's from all angles, because at the moment, everywhere from the ground up, there's a laissez-faire attitude towards this issue with gambling in video games. People don't want to see it until they get the bill. When it comes to violence or sexual content, they're all totally against that, and 18 and stuff. But again, it comes from the ground up, the retailer, the parents, because I'm not gonna lie, I played games that were 18 rated when I was like 7. But again, these games did not have these packs or anything like that. These only started coming into effect when I was around 12, 13, 14. And even then, it was still very much early days. Became more prevalent in my 20s anyway. But I think it just evolved with the social media sphere of the way the internet has evolved in the last 10 years. Yeah. However, retailers, to be fair, they do normally age gate you, but if the parents with you, they don't, obviously, they just get it. So I think it's one, parents shouldn't really let the kids buy 18 rated content because, again, you know, it's that. But again, you know, do you want to play a single game? Play it. Do you want to play it? Do you want to play it? Doesn't matter. You film that's 18, they'll see it. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
And with other games that are rated 3 years old plus, you know, the kids can play it from 3 years old. It's fine. A kid can go in that store at 4, theoretically, and buy that game. There has to be some sort of protection in place where if they know the user is underage, under 18, because you can tell by the username or whatever, a system needs to be in place where it flags this person as underage 18, they cannot buy this content. I remember with the big thing for me when I was growing up in the new online sphere with the Xbox 360, for instance, or the PS3, DLC was a thing, like, you know, downloadable content where you buy an expansion for your game, but that was boosting your player experience in terms of, you know, you can get 100 hours extra gameplay. We seem to have gone away from that in the video game industry, and we've moved on to this pack system where it's just machine gunning content out for cheap and just buying. So I think quality is a thing that's caused this issue. It's quantity over quality, but again, it's every like stretch of the being in this industry. It's the parents, it's the company who makes the games, it's the service provider, the console provider, and it's also the government and regulation bodies. They all have to agree. Well, the parents not so much, obviously, but they all have to agree that, you know, this is the way we go forward, and you all have to stick to it. Like they agreed to age rating in video games. Like, that's not a mandatory government thing. That was actually the video game industry coming together and, you know, deciding the age ratings, and, you know, we need this in place, because they weren't a thing up until I think the mid-90s at all, and they all agreed upon that. So they need to do something similar about this. But again, it's making them so much money. If they don't have to, why will they do it? It's like any company on the planet. If you're making a ton of money doing something that no one is pushing you to stop, you're just going to keep doing it.
And do you think this changed, because it is quite as you said, it's quite a seismic shift from just like, you know, you can go in, you can expand the game, you can improve your gamer experience. As you said, you get more hours, you can do more stuff, you know, you end up playing the game longer. Do you think the change now, which is incorporating this like gambling like elements, right, such as the loot boxes and all the microtransactions, all that sort, do you think that's changing video games, is actually harming the overall iGaming's ecosystem itself then long term, if changes aren't made now?
Well, I've seen some really disgusting practices happen. This was a few years ago, one example where it was a big streamer. I'm not going to mention his name because you could literally Google the details from what I'm telling you, you'll find the article about this guy. And he basically, with another YouTuber, he's one of those like virtual sports playing YouTubers, and he set up this site where they could gamble for these packs, basically, or skins or whatever for another game. And he was advertising it in a way that it wasn't gambling, and the UKGC found out and they went after him big time. He got fined. I think his fine was actually £200,000 because he was promoting underage gambling to children.
Right.
And his case was, I wasn't doing it. I was just promoting this site where they could go get these packs and stuff. But to be fair, from the way this guy was defending himself, I actually genuinely believe he thought he was not promoting gambling. He 100% was. He was making money from it and everything. And he got fined accordingly. And he barely escaped prison time. For me, someone like that is disgusting. He deliberately, his audience is mainly like underage people. He targeted them. It was disgusting. As soon as I seen the video and I seen this site, I was like, this is gambling. Like, it's 100% obvious. So it's the perception around it, because people, as long as they can get away with it, they'll do it. But since he got absolutely crucified by the UKTC and they went the legal route, which totally I agree with, and they did a really good job bringing this guy to prosecution, we don't see that many sites in the UK like that anymore, because it put the fear of God into people. in other countries that still exist, but in the UK, they put fear of into people, and that's what the UKGC is for. That's the only time I've seen the UKGC do something like this in terms of this sphere of like pack, and they did a massively great job. And unfortunately, we could have used it as a platform, but it just didn't progress further. But yeah, so when the authorities do enforce these rules and regulations for underage gambling, they do a really good job.
Just staying on the topic around the sort of streaming, and again, I know we've talked about it in previous episodes about streaming and all the recent sort of legislations changing, all that sort of stuff. Do you think a lot of these changes in the legislation is actually going to physically help this sort of online gambling industry through streamers?
For Twitch, it will probably not help that much. Well, it will help the underage gambling, of course, because age verification and all this. I see a lot of the casino streamers now moving more to YouTube, where they verify age and all that. So I think we'll see a shift moving forward. Twitch and all these other channels for streaming are great, especially for children who wants to see other people play and all these things. That's a new craze now. However, the people who promote these pack buys and loot boxes, as we mentioned before, these are the ones I think they really need to push out of the ecosystem to have it over there. It is very important to make sure that everybody who is watching these videos are aware of what they're watching and what the content is, because sometimes we can watch a movie and there's underlying messages like commercials and all this, so it's how to angle their streams as well. So I definitely think that there needs to be some form of governing body having a look at this as well, same as we have for online gambling. As soon as we do something, there is always someone straight away looking over us. That's why we always make sure to abide all rules and try to protect all players as much as possible. And I think that's the main thing that these companies need to focus on moving forward, to make sure that everybody is safe and that we have a good the gaming realm is good for everybody.
Yeah, let me just say this as well, Christian, to you, right? So if you shut one area down, right, you improve regulation, you've got tons of oversight that are looking over it, will there always just be a natural feeling for some of these guys that are going to try and take advantage just to move to another platform? How do you guys, again, this is for the two of you as well, ever going to get to a point that there is enough oversight and there is enough regulation to stop some of this underage stuff, whether it be streamers or games or whatever else? Could we ever see that happening, or do you think people will just find another way? Do you know what I mean?
It's a tough question there, Matt. There's a lot of changes coming. Many of them are there to protect players, which is great. However, with some of the regulations, I think they are going a little bit overboard. But still, they should always protect the players. As Philip said as well, if there's a will, there's a way.
So I feel like it's always going to be that kind of, they'll find a way. However, then it's the job of the regulators and the governments in various places to then find a way to beat them again. It's the same with criminal activity. They'll always find a way, and then the local police force will find a way to beat them again, and then so on and so on. And unfortunately, at the moment, instead of a cat and mouse, it's actually like Tom and Jerry, where Tom was getting absolutely smoked by Jerry, and he's so far behind. So unfortunately, the regulations and the government industries and freemium need to catch up, because it's like looking at Tom and Jerry at the moment. It needs to be a proper cat and mouse game, but at the moment it's just Tom getting the mick taken out of him by everything that's going on. But again, it's about perception, and I think perception is slowly changing towards this underage gambling thing in video games. I think more people are becoming concerned by it, and we're seeing a lot more activity in the press and the government inquiry in the UK, for instance, that I spoke about. Yes, it didn't progress things by leaps and bounds, but it's a sign that things are starting to progress into a way where they are seriously looking at this now and not just dancing around the issue.
That was actually going to lead into my last question, because really, do you think things have improved preventing kids? Do you think, yes, we've talked about the sizable shift and things are improving, but, do you think over the coming years we're going to see some massive shift now that so many people, governments, regulators are looking to improve it. Do you think we will see over the next couple of years, like we've seen over the last 20 years, a massive sizable shift to make sure that kids are protected?
So with with our industry, it's become leaps and bounds. As I said, in the past 20 years, it's like snowballed so much, and it's great. Don't get me wrong, there's some stuff we need to fix as well, but we're doing this every day. We're thinking of new ways to protect the player or to improve stuff like this. However, with video games, it's never really been enforced in the industry. As I said, the age gating for their video games, like the 18 plus ratings, they're enforced by the industry themselves, not by a government body. Certain countries do enforce. I think Australia is one of them, where certain games will not make the cut regardless. So again, it depends on countries, but most European countries don't, unless it's a really controversial topic, like Germany, for instance, with anything to do with the time of World War II. That doesn't make it visually into video games. But I feel like the industry still needs to police itself like we do as well. And I think a regulator may pop up eventually for the video game industry, because video game industry, if you look at the video games in the 70s compared to where it is now, it's ridiculous. That advance in 50 years is nuts.
It's crazy.
And it's advanced so much in the past 10 years that I think everyone's still playing catch up with how it exploded, because online gaming is a thing. If I go back 15 years ago, online gaming was near enough still dial up, and we were trying to figure out what it is. Now it's massive. So I feel like everyone's trying to catch up with that, and social media at the same time, and YouTube and Twitch, all this is happening at once, and it still affects and they intertwine with each other. So I feel like everyone's still playing, as I said, the catch-up game. I think once everyone has played the catch-up game and caught up, I think we can see some improvements. But again, it has to be a will from all parties to progress this forward. Because until this is sorted, it's just going to get worse. And I don't want it to see it go where gambling was, 30 to 40 years ago, where it was kind of like the Wild West, where it's not now, but video games could end up going to the Wild West kind of scenario. Because that's where unfortunately these packs going, people are promoting these packs, people are promoting illegal ways to buy coins for the service to buy these packs, that the service provider deems illegal, and they ban accounts. But in reality, it's not. It's just because they're not getting the money.
Yeah.
So it's so complicated, but it needs to be policed. It's a massive income stream of billions probably now.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Very much. No, that's as well what we as well. We try always to make sure that we are responsible and help these charities that are out there to help these vulnerable people. I think that's the most responsible step we can take from a gambling industry point of view at the moment, because we can't really go into the video game industry. It's not really or the social casino aspect. So from our end, we try to support all the charities to make sure that they are set up and that they can help the people that need the help.
Because, for instance, from an operator standpoint, not a provider like we are, if a player contacts an operator and says, I have a problem with my gambling, that operator will help them. They'll help them close their account. They'll recommend some charities, places they can go counselling and stop gambling, and recommend things like Gamban, which is a really good piece of software that if you download it onto your devices, it will physically stop you from gambling on anything.
Wow.
Because it blocks all the sites. So it'll do it on your PC, it'll do it on your mobile phone, and it's really hard to get rid of the software, because you can set it for a year. So there's things in place in the gambling industry that intertwine and help our players stop gambling. Don't get me wrong, some players will just carry on and not admit the problem, and it's the operator's job to try to detect it, but again, there's no perfect system to detect that. Whereas with the video game industry, if a player contacted the provider of the game, 9 times out of 10 they won't care. We've seen lots of controversial things within the video game industry, where players have been ripped off on launch day for items they were going to buy, like for 70 pounds or euros or whatever, and it was like the lowest quality thing in the universe. So they just do everything to get money in the door. If a player contacts them, they don't get hurt. They're like, so what? You lost money gambling. Well, not gambling, because they won't see it as gambling, but you lost money buying our packs. We didn't make you buy the packs. They'll care. They don't care at all. So the video game until the video game companies start caring about this topic, they're not going to help the player. They don't care.
Well, so we do see some changes for definite. So awesome. All right. Well, listen, The two of you, pleasure as always. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time out this morning to grab your opinions. It's been brilliant. Everybody stay safe, have a great Christmas and New Year, and the following podcast will be first week in January, so everybody stay safe over the Christmas period, and we'll see you in the New Year, guys. All right, so take care.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.